Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Cooperative Political Podcast. I'm your host, Jackson. Joining me is Nate.
Hey.
Today, we're going to be talking about a couple news topics and a political topic. So our first step into the news topic is the storms. We wanted to update you on how those are going, because last episode I kind of made it a comment that I didn't think Hurricane Florence was going to be a real hurricane. It was going to degrade to basically just a rainstorm. I was completely wrong. Hurricane Florence has hit the Carolinas and the places surrounding it. The death toll is up to 14 at the time of writing this and recording this. If you happen to live in that area, seek shelter if you can and get to an evacuation center because the storm has really been trashing everything. The other storm I want to talk about is the Super Typhoon Mangkhut. Sorry if I'm pronouncing that wrong. It's hit both the Philippines and Hong Kong and now mainland China, which is basically Hong Kong, in these past 24 hours. The death toll has risen to 13 at the time of writing and has left around 100 injured and even more displaced. Even places like Vietnam and the whole of the Indochina region, as long as Macau and some of those places around China, are in very dangerous risk of getting hit by this typhoon. Some American news. You may have heard this, but there have been mass gas explosions in a handful of towns above Boston. I don't know if Nate wanted to talk about that, as I'm kind of doing most of these, but for some reason, the Washington Post isn't letting me read the article, so it's all you.
Yes, so it's weird. It literally just thousands of people, their houses just straight up exploded, but nobody knows why. There's not like a gas leak. They didn't see any problems with it. It literally just straight up blew up, and now hundreds of houses are just burning down everywhere. And before, Columbia Gas said that they would be upgrading their natural gas lines for better safety issues, which I think is kind of ironic. They were literally about to update them so they'd be more safe, and then they all exploded. But it's just weird. I mean, one person so far is dead, but many are injured and thousands are now kind of displaced because they just blew up all their houses. The response time was pretty short, but there's so many houses to cover and such a big fire that it's going to be very hard for them to tackle.
Yeah, it's been actually ridiculous on the fire department. It's put a lot of stress on them. It's all three of the towns in Merrimack Valley above Boston, for those wondering. It's very dangerous. I actually heard a story that a police officer that was actually off duty at the time, who's being put on duty due to the fact that they're having to evacuate so many people, went home, evacuated his family, on duty, keep in mind, evacuated his family, and then couldn't stay with them. Immediately had to go back on duty and keep making people evacuate. It's suspected to be over 8,600 homes and businesses that have been, at this point, abandoned and waiting for fire departments to tell them it's safe for people to return to their houses. We still don't know the situation, and people are still having trouble figuring out what it is. They just really have no idea. Gas experts are going to be on the scene shortly, and they will know what it is soon. So, our last article, until we get into our political topic, the EU has passed Article 13, but Europe's mean war is far from over. Switching to my notes here, and so Articles 11 and 13, for those who don't know, is basically just a link tax and a upload filter. The directive was originally rejected by MEPs and the Congress itself in July following criticisms of two key provisions, Article 11 and 13, dubbed the link tax and upload filter. However, in Parliament a couple of days ago, an updated version of the directive was approved, along with amended versions of Articles 11 and 13, the link tax and upload filter. The final vote was 438 in favor and 226 against. The most important parts of this were Articles 11 and 13. Article 11 is intended to give publishers and papers a way to make money when companies like Google's link to their stories, allowing them to demand paid licenses. Article 13 requires certain platforms like YouTube and Facebook stop users sharing unlicensed copyright material, i.e., the Dos Equis guy, and anything that could be copyrighted is under protection, and and companies can demand that is removed.
A lot of people are
So
against this.
yeah,
I mean, they're
for sure.
even people like who create or help to like work on the internet, as in people like, sorry, yeah, people who helped work with the internet, like Jimmy Wales and Tim Berners-Lee, who both helped, who were the Wikipedia and the www like name part that you see everywhere inventors. They are strongly against this, and rightfully so.
Yeah. Really, all these articles truly are as a way for the EU government as a body to protect mainstream media, the dying platform that it truly is. By providing the link tax, it will make it extremely difficult and sometimes outright illegal to have people repost or cite any sources from mainstream media platforms, and if passed, truly kind of destroy underground and independent news sources. I personally do not want to sound like a conspiracy guy, but this is the only way I really kind of know how to put it. Destroying these underground news sources will be a defeat for us, the masses, and it will make it easy for news to stay fake as it is its current state. Just like we talked about in episode 2, fake news, this is almost a way for news to stay fake, is it'll stay in the hands of these corporations and
Who are
be incredibly
biased.
difficult and yeah, stay biased, and it will be incredibly difficult to stay independent without actually having to go properly underground and be hiding away from these taxes. It's going to be a real fight, and I'm very nervous about it. But I do we want to kind of bring into that. We want to talk about, so this is a bummer for the people in Europe, but this will, I believe that a majority of our listeners are from the USA. So instead of just blindly talking about these EU articles, we want to talk about how this will affect us, Americans and North Americans alike. So any content originating in the EU will have to follow these guidelines, thus affecting the world at large, which will cause problems from both YouTubers we enjoy watching and any other kind of media you could enjoy from the European area. So even your Facebook buddy out of like Germany is still going to have to follow all these protocols, and thus whatever you get from him is going to be going through the upload filter, and thus you can have a meme be completely destroyed. That's why it has been called the meme war, because it truly is a meme war. It is going to be kind of filtering out all copyrighted content to almost China like statuses, where as China has got very strict internet policies, and thus it's very difficult to upload and make things there. But it'll be similar in the EU if this law is really put into effect the way that they is supposed to be put into effect.
So, so this is how it can affect the U.S. So we are looking at like three main things. We have the three different outcomes right now. We have, if the US continues on its way and just blatantly ignores what the EU is doing, then US today will be mainly the same as it is now. We'll get more into the whole idea of government censorship and like the free internet and how the US is doing on that in a second. But then we have the other option, and that's looking at a pretty scary future because having the government regulate what you can post on the internet, and even if it's just light-hearted humor that just uses somebody's face, it starts being an intellectual war because it's like, okay, can you really defend this in court that you could use this meme? And no one's going to do that because no one wants to pay money to post a meme. And you don't want to have to go to, like, literally have to go to court to go post a picture of the Dos Equis guy with a caption. And it destroys the whole point of parodies, which directly draw from all of the sources that they're ripping off on purpose. But now companies may be able to have free reign and be like, well, that parody does draw on it, but it's now ours, and we own all intellectual property. You're running into a risk of just patenting everything. So the US, if they saw this, if they see this and are interested in it, we might have a problem because the net neutrality has been a big thing in the past, and with the
We'll talk
ability
about that in
to
a second.
essentially tax people or demand money from companies for using their links, it's going to kind of create a little bit of a little bit of a, I don't know, kind of an economic war. It's just like who can charge the most, or who can get their thing clicked on the most, and you're going to have, well, buzzwordings because you're going to get places that want to be noticed so they can demand money, and the government's just going to have to. I mean, not the government, sorry, the companies are just going to have to, and you're gonna just get, like, essentially things that'll grab your attention but aren't actually particularly good. They're not really. They're usually fake, or they're biased, or there's something that you would not really get any informational value out of, but they catch your attention, and therefore they can profit. People can profit off of that.
Yeah. So, for those who don't really know, I'm going to take a second to talk about net neutrality because, as I put it, I really don't think, after doing my research for this episode, I don't think personally we are going to have any problems with internet censorship as the U.S. as we move forward, at least till the end of the Trump administration. I don't think there's any plans for internet censorship. He personally has not enjoyed the articles in one of his tweets, if I remember correctly. But I want to run you guys up to speed on net neutrality as a whole. So, as you all know, the FCC, the Federal Communications Commission, have been pushing to roll back net neutrality. Specifically, Chairman Ajit Pai. That has been pushing to abolish it altogether. He has been in a bunch of memes and assures the public that nothing will change. You've probably seen him with the dorky hat. But that just isn't the case. To put it lightly, would put the internet in control of big corporations and push it to become part of the nation's market rather than really in government control, where it is right now.
All right. So, with this in mind now, thank you, Jackson, for that quick interjection. We can now move on into our main topic for today, which is, well, internet control and just essentially uh, taking people and censoring people on the internet, and that's not something that we want to happen. So we'll explore that in a second. So the internet, with the Articles 1113, is starting to become a little bit of a gray zone. You had, as of like 2 years ago, an unrestricted and free internet where you could essentially do whatever you wanted, so long as you didn't commit treason, or you didn't kill somebody, or you didn't do any of the illegal acts that are stated. But now, with the whole debacle with the FCC, you now have a change. It's more of a push now for governments to have more regulation and control over the internet that they provide to everybody else. It's it kind of started in the US, but it was mainly just quick regulations to help companies stop the dark web. But now the Europeans have gotten a hold of it, and they like the idea, and so they voted in, and a more like conservative, more controlling bill that's not like the U.S. so far would be the Articles 1113, because they now allow people to essentially hunt down and destroy others who would just be parodizing or jokingly use images or other intellectual property.
Yeah, pretty much. That sums up. It's gonna be pretty gross when Article 13 and 11 passes. Um, but I do kind of want to reassure the Americans here that are watching that I don't personally believe that internet censorship has begun in the U.S. Net neutrality was only brought into effect in 2015 under the Obama administration, and I personally do not believe very much will change once net neutrality is rolled back, to say, put it lightly, as compared to Articles 11 and 13, which is putting the government in control of the internet. The rollback of net neutrality will again be putting the internet in private organizations' hands. And I don't believe that it'll become censored that way. Now, keep in mind, I don't think it's going to be better. These companies will have full reign over the people that subscribe to their internet services. So if you subscribe to Spectrum or whatever, they can, up your prices. I think I remember seeing jokes like, or the Netflix package where, buy this package and you'll have Netflix kind of thing. Like, it could definitely get worse. Don't get me wrong, but I don't think that the internet will become censored.
It's more of a fear of it becoming privatized because, well, it's almost guaranteed that they're not going to just start banning memes like they did over in Europe because people had such an outcry to the sound of that or the idea of that. It's more of the problem that the US is going to start looking into allowing businesses to, well, flex their muscles, so to speak. They can demand money for their links. They can get rid of things that they consider intellectual property. The U.S. has had problem with patents before. We've had tons of companies just declaring patents and then when not backing them up, but they'll declare patents on basically anyone or anything. And since that's the case, I mean, you're having problems of people being taking other people's ideas or ideas that you can't really patent and sticking a label on them, and then now companies can go to the internet and say that's ours, you can't use that anymore.
Yeah, and within theory, that's kind of the same thing that's going to be happening in the U.S. Is people can technically, as this, it'll be in the hands of the free market, which means big companies, the people like Spectrum, AT&T will have, Frontier will have full control over the internet, so to speak, but only certain realms. Net neutrality isn't going to become a free for all on the internet, and you could just fight to the death with corporations. I don't think it's going to become free market. I think it's still going to be somewhat government regulated. That is the plan. After looking over some of the things that Ajit Pai has said, he's just kind of stated that the government's going to stay secure. And now, keep in mind, this can change. Everything can change. Net neutrality hasn't been rolled back yet, but it has been passed to roll it back. But I don't really think that much is going to change. Like I've said earlier, this is kind of just beating a dead horse at this point. But I want to just keep that known that things could get bad, but I don't think they're going to get crazy bad. That's all.
We're not we're not going full China right now. We're just it's a transition period. It might not be a great transition period, but in the end, it's still looking better than most other countries. We've gone far, but in a new digitalish age, we need to like kind of set these boundaries of how and why people should use the internet. But we can't restrict freedom in that chase. We can't pull an EU and ban memes because they're owned by other people. That's the point of them. If you just start banning things willy-nilly, when does it stop?
Yeah, really. But I do want to provide hope here, and just in me talking. Now, whatever hope that can be that a 16-year-old is telling you, hey, there's still a chance. But, this isn't over yet. You can still go down to your local rep and say, hey, don't let this happen. There's still going to be another vote. They still have to put it into effect, which has not been done yet. But we've seen all Articles 11 and 13 happen. We do hold the majority. Nothing was pushed there that telling people that Articles 11 and 13 were being passed. We've been able to stop things before by just talking to our local representatives, the people that are in our government. And we've been able to stop terrible laws before. It's definitely something that we as a community have effect on. So I just encourage you, if they really think about trying to censor our internet privileges, even censor the show, just know that we still have power. This is still a republic. This is still a democracy in some regards. We definitely still have power to change the outcome of the future.
And people in the EU, you vote, you have sway still. It hasn't gone into effect. It still has to have another ratifying vote for it to actually go into effect. So this is your chance. You can now go and you have different political systems, especially with the EU, since they're all linked countries. But you can definitely email them or letter them, and if you disagree the way they're practicing it, you can tell them. It's not like a dictatorship. You can put your opinion in. You can try to convince one of your representatives, because there's a lot of them, and I'm pretty sure they're by country in groups. So write to them and try to make sure that they understand what they're doing and how it's going to affect them and why they should or should not do it.
That's kind of it. This is going to end our episode. It's kind of a bummer that we have to end it here because really, this is still happening. Everything around the internet censorship, net neutrality is all still in effect. This is more of just a brief on how you as a person can think about it. You're now informed. You kind of know what's going on. For, when your buddy goes, haha, the meme war, it's like, it's a little bit more serious than that, right? But in closing, I hope you've enjoyed listening to the Cooperative Political Podcast. Hope to see you next week or at the next episode.
You have a good one. Bye.
Bye.